Welcome to Pigeon River Farm, doing farming right. I'm Robert Brown, the owner of Pigeon River Farm. Thank you for viewing. In tonight's episode, we're going to discuss the challenges that we have on the farm here during the winter months. Winter in Wisconsin can be quite long. Often we find winter starts to set in mid-November and often runs through April. It's an awful long time to be dealing without our beautiful green grass that we so enjoy here. The cold actually has a benefit. It does a lot of things for us other than maybe challenges the farmer. It really challenges the farmer, challenges the livestock, but it also cleans up the environment. And I'm referring to here the bugs, the microbial life that's out there. A lot of the bad insects, the bad bacteria, all suffer. They are challenged during them kind of conditions when we have extreme cold and snow. So it all goes with what we have to contend with in a normal environment. People in the south have to deal with extreme heat, so we have extreme cold. Well, in the cattle and poultry end of it here, we believe in having the animals in a natural environment. Most people really they wonder why we don't have wonderful warm homes for our cattle. Well, that's not the way nature works. Cattle are intended to be outside. If you look at buffalo or where these animals indigenously came from, they were outside. The dairy operation, a good example that we have in the area, the old traditional barns. One of the challenges, they were relatively warm. They had a haymow on top, relatively tightly built. Get the cows in there, it was nice and warm. Everybody talked about how pleasant it was. Well, cattle, the average temperature, what I've learned in school, that they are comfortable in is between 40 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Where humans, we like it right about 70. So 70 is a magic number for us. So when the barn's warm in there, humans are comfortable. Cattle are not. Well, the reason they're not is you're exposing them to all of this bacterial life that can build up in the barn. One of the biggest challenges is the things like pasture-raised, many other respiratory diseases can all unfold. So even though the animals may appear to be very comfortable, they're also being exposed to that kind of a witch's brew of biological toxins that build up. We're out in pasture. We have little or no problem with our cattle. They just are healthy. It's hard to imagine when you see the snow blowing and extreme cold. When last year we had temperatures that ran down to 28 below zero Fahrenheit air temperature with around 60 below wind chill. That's brutal. We make sure we have wind blocks, so the cattle are protected from that perspective. They have a wind block, but they are exposed, and we chose a breed of cattle that are well suited to this environment. Scottish Highland cattle, because they are a breed that puts a heavy fur coat on. And that fur coat really works and benefits them. Where the short-haired cattle, like you'll see the cattle are Angus, they are a short-haired, but they actually will put a large fat layer on. Often quarter inch, 3/8, half inch thick of fat. So that's their insulation. Plus they'll put a lot of additional fur. So there's different ways Mother Nature takes care of it, under these conditions. The biggest threat to us, and actually being in the northern tier of states actually works better for us, is freezing rain or 35 degree rain is death. That's the one we worry about. Because if the animal gets completely soaked, even though their fur pretty much repels the water, but long enough rain at that cold temperature is very, very dangerous. That's the time when we don't want to have any calving taking place. Calving at that time is very difficult. We don't have control over it. We run a bull year round, so we just kind of hope for the best. Fortunately, we only have a few days out of the season that will have rain at cold temperatures. Once it gets the snow, birthing, we just had a calf born a couple days ago. It was sub-zero. It was around 10 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, and we ran it no problem whatsoever. Calf was born, mama cleaned it up, it was nursing right away, and it's out bouncing around. One of the advantages of that is the animal is not exposed to any bacterias. It's the only good bacteria that it's exposed to good bacteria, and that's from the mother's milk, the colostrum that initially gets fed from when it first starts to nurse, and then the milk. So that's the exposure. There is not the environmental exposure that occurs. Chickens, on the other hand, they are out during the winter. We keep them in 2 very large high tunnels. They can't withstand wind. One thing with poultry, handle extreme colds. Last year again, when it got down to 28 below 0 inside of the high tunnel in the morning, it was within a few degrees of that. It was about 25 below. Challenges with water. Chickens were all fine. They actually had no problem whatsoever. They can withstand a cold. What they cannot withstand is wind. We have to make sure we shield the birds at all cost from any wind. The high tunnel designs we went with is Zimmerman is the brand name. It has side curtains on it that come down from the top, so we can still get adequate ventilation. So again, back to the problem I talked about even with barns and what you've seen in these big commercial layer houses. They got to have a huge amount of mechanical fans to keep the air flowing. Well, we got to make sure that we have the same thing. I wish I could have, I guess we'd call it smell-o-vision here. You could tell, you go in our high tunnels, middle of the winter, with 400 birds in there, and there is no manure smell at all. It actually smells fine, and it's not because I'm just a farmer and I'm used to it. It actually we don't let any ammonia build up in there whatsoever. The birds are able to dust. We allow the side curtains. I adjust them based on weather conditions, based on wind. That would be our main criteria. If it's going to be extremely windy, I bring them up. I leave a very small opening on the side curtains. If it's going to be a no wind condition or very light winds, I'll often lower them down 6 inches to a foot to let good quality air in. The birds need that. But yet, where the birds reside, down on the ground, the side curtains are up about, I think the top of them are pretty close to 5 feet. So any air that would flow through stays on top. Plus, when we have the way we work it here, the birds are able to dust once the most of the greens are consumed. They're still in there dusting, looking for bugs, and staying very active. And as I mentioned in a previous video, the vitamin D environment from the sunlight. On a sunny day, it said it may start out in the morning and be at 0 degree Fahrenheit, and we can see 50, 60 degrees in there by noon. The birds enjoy that. They really prosper in that environment. That's one of the things that the methodology we've put together works very well. I'm really surprised we don't see more farms utilizing this approach. Now, I talked about the birds being outside. We're under the animal welfare approved program that we've enrolled in since 2015. We're very proud of it. It's something that we worked very hard to achieve. The birds have full access to the outside. So days that are not windy and the snowpack isn't too deep, they will wander all the way out to the pasture. If the cattle are into the area close to the high tunnels, we'll see often 50 to 100, many times even more, birds out in the pasture. Like I said, again, it's a function of the snowpack, not a function of temperature. I've been seeing the birds out on frozen fields when we've had very little snow, when it's been down again at the brutal temperature of 0 degrees. The birds are out and they're scratching and still looking and eating. There's of course no bugs out there, but there's remnants of grasses. There's lots of material that they eat that's produced from the cattle. We have if the bunk wagon again, is in close, they'll climb up in there and they'll scratch and try to find any remnants of feed that they can. The key there is the birds get a lot of exercise. They're very, very active, and that probably is one of the reasons we get good longevity. We have a policy here on the farm, both for our cows and our hens, our layer hens, that we do not cull. We want to keep them to natural death. We want to be as humane as possible, and it may not be the best business model because they do get a little costly toward the end, their productivity. But again, if their productivity, what we see compared to many of the adjoining farms, we'll talk about poultry here. In the case of the poultry, we are able to get relatively good production on older hens, 3, 4, sometimes 5 years old, where in most of them they're culling them out at about 2 years. They're actually just processed into soup chickens. Seems like kind of a shame. So it works for us. Same thing, we've had cows as old as 16 years old, having another calf out on pasture, still healthy as can be. Do have some challenges when they get older, but for the most part, they survive fine. The next thing I want to talk about here is how do we manage? So you understand what the conditions are. Well, we got to get the hay out on pasture. So we use a bunk wagon. We found that works the best. An idea with the bunk wagon is we simply put the bales, typically 3 to 5 bales go into the bunk wagon. I tow it out on a 50-acre pasture, and I'll move it to different locations. And the logic there is to allow the animals during the wintertime to manure in that area, plus any what we call spoilage, that would be leakage of hay that comes off the bunk wagon that gets stepped on, is going to turn back into premium soil. So we want to move it, like most farms, they typically want to feed right up by the barn, where all the manure and the urine. And the urine is actually the thing that it's really maintains some of the best benefits for the pasture. So we need to get the animal out there, active in the areas where very soon, in a few short months, we'll have grasses growing. We need to get them nutrients out there. So that's one of the big reasons we go with what we do with the bunk wagon, hauling the bales out. You'll see that it's challenging in some of the weather conditions we've had, but it works, and it works very well for us. So when you look out and you see cattle out in extreme cold, I've got a friend that has a farm. I've been to a number of his classes, Gabe Brown, and Gabe is out in North Dakota, so it's a little chillier than we have here. And he runs Black Angus, and many times it can get to 40 below zero, and that herd is out there just as fine as can be. So again, don't feel too sorry. I often feel sorry for the animals that are confined, where man isn't necessarily doing them any favor, and then they have to live in a pharmaceutical bath, so to speak. They have to be treated with medication on such a regular basis. That means the food sort that we bring in is all coming in medicated. We have no need. In fact, we're probably not the pharmaceutical company's favorite, because we don't spend any money along that line. You know, things we use, and we'll have a future discussion on that with probiotics and all the minerals in the feed and the feed sort. It's symbiotic. We have to bring in good, healthy food. So where our hay is raised on our own farm, or stuff that I buy in, is all going to be very high in nutrients. That in turn, the output product that we put out is very high in nutrients. So I thank you very much, and you have a great evening. Talk to you soon.